Would you have preferred this package to not have been means tested? Would that have been better to drive a bit of activity?
Yeah, during our discussions we were talking to the government about a package that didn't have a means test on it, both in terms of the value of the project and the household income. But that wasn't the way that the government saw it, and obviously they've got limited resources to be able to channel into an investment into the residential building industry, but $680 million is a very substantial investment.
From what you're hearing from your members though, even with that means test, will there be enough activity to keep them busy, to keep tradies in work?
Well, we think so. We think that there'll be a substantial uplift in the amount of renovation work where people have been at home during the COVID-19 medical crisis, health crisis, weighing up their home, whether or not they need extensions, an extra room for a bedroom or for an office. Interest rates are very low, and now is a good time to invest in some extensions and renovations to your home. It is a more substantial threshold for a project than rear decks and pergolas, but it's certainly going to generate a lot of activity and therefore a lot of employment and jobs for builders and trade contractors.
So give us a sense of where the industry was heading without the package and what you hope the numbers will be with the support plan.
Well, our most recent forecast towards the beginning of the year reflected a number of housing starts in 2021 to be in the order of 177,000 homes. That had to be reforecast once we saw the impact of the coronavirus, and we reforecast them down to about 111,000. Now that's an annual reduction, but for the second half of this year we saw that housing project commencements were going to decline by about half compared to 3 years ago. So it was a very, very substantial decline in the number of slabs that we were going to put down in the second half of this year.
And so in that context, will this fill that gap entirely?
Well, it won't get us back to 185,000, which is the par for the course average that we would like to see. That would be the number that we would be targeting on an average yearly basis. But it'll certainly lift the number of projects by, we think, between 20 and 30,000 over that period of time. So that's a very substantial number of additional slabs, a very substantial amount of additional work for the builders and the contractors out there.
And with this timeline they've given to have contracts signed by the end of the year, can approvals be done that quickly? Well,
that is a challenge, and we are calling upon the state governments and the local councils to help in that regard. Where a development consent is required, that can take some time, and really the councils need to step up and streamline that process. Where a building approval only is required, that can be achieved in a matter of weeks. So certainly over the next 3 months we expect to see the number of building approvals going through the system increasing and the slabs on ground increasing. But yeah, it really is a challenge now for the states and the local councils to step up, streamline those planning requirements and the regulations that can quite often add months and months and months to an approval process.
I know we're only at the start of this program, but as you look ahead to the end of the year, would you be hoping that the government might consider, after the first phase, if it's fully subscribed and goes well, that they might look to another round of it?
Well, that will depend on how we respond towards the second half of this year and what happens with migration and demand side issues into 2021. But yeah, if the industry is in need of additional stimulus throughout the course of 2021, then sure, we'll be talking to the federal government. But there's a role here for state governments to play also, and a number of state governments have already stepped up to the mark, and we expect some more announcements over coming days and weeks.
Yeah, indeed. We've been reporting that the WA and Tasmanian governments are going to contribute $20,000 per eligible grant, so that brings it up to $45,000. That's quite a substantial starting point, isn't it, for someone undertaking a home build or a renovation? Are you optimistic that the other states will follow suit?
Well, we're aware that New South Wales are looking at a number of options. The ACT government announced some concessions on stamp duty today for the purchase of the land on which you might build a home. Not sure what Queensland are doing. They've got an election coming up at the end of the year, and I would have thought that they'd be looking at some contribution to complement what the federal government has announced today to help housing activity along in that state. In the northern parts of Queensland, the industry needs some support up there. The economy needs some activity up there. So it's a really important time for the Queensland government to be looking at providing some support to complement what the federal government announced today.
What's your position when it comes to social housing, given we have more homeless Australians than ever before today?
Yeah, we have proposed to the government, and it's been engaged in conversations with both the federal government and state governments about social housing, public housing, community housing, crisis housing. There are so many families and individuals in need of housing and accommodation, a roof over their heads across Australia. It is a great opportunity for governments to work together, and we applaud the federal government in bringing the First Ministers, the Premiers and Chief Ministers of the states and territories and the Treasurers to the table to work out ways in which they can work together. There are a number of different options for social housing and public housing, whether that's an outright payment, whether that's a land rent scheme for Crown land, or whether or not that's a seeding fund for private investment. There are a number of options that are being talked through now.
And if they were to bring some of that investment forward, it would seem to, achieve two goals at once, not only the social good of reducing homelessness, but also it would be a clear stimulus because it's not money that otherwise might have been spent, as opposed to, say, someone building a house or a renovation. This would absolutely be new additional money.
It very much is a win-win. It's an option for the government to consider and make whatever announcements they think is appropriate for the program to take effect during 2021. That's next year. That will help our industry in terms of transitioning from private housing through into social housing over the course of a 6 to 12 month period. So yes, it generates jobs, it generates economic activity, and it also, as you say, provides a roof over a number of people's head, and those people in desperate need of a house desperately need that.
Housing Industry Association Managing Director Graham Wolfe, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for that.